phones will crash the internet. So if you have a friend and you can buddy up with the person next to you, could one of you, in a web browser, could you open menti.com?
I guess it's going to be your job.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
It's okay.
And in a moment, I will give you a code to put in. In a moment, I'll give you the code. Not yet. In a moment, I'll give you the code. Okay? Have you opened a web page?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Are we ready to go?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, do you all have a handout?
Yeah.
You do, great. If you don't, or if you want one for a friend, or if you want to look at the PowerPoint slides later, you can go to a site I have here. I don't call it my website, that would be a bit big. It's like a library, and it's where I keep a list of, I keep things like this, so I keep my slides and things there. And you can see, you go to the page, it tells you here, it says conference talks, and at the bottom here you'll see the links for the handout, and you don't need to be able to read this is just what it looks like, okay? In case you need that. Okay, great. In a moment we'll use this this web page, but just not quite yet. In a moment. Okay. So very briefly, I know that many of you trained as teachers here at International House Kiev. Could I have a show of hands? Could you put your hand up if you're living and or working in Kiev? Okay, that's about a third or half. Thank you. And if you're from another city in the Ukraine, I know there are people here from Lviv, from Kharkiv, from Dnipro, from Odessa, very good, from lots of other places. Great, okay, so we have some Ukrainian experts here, and we also have some local Kiev experts as well. Okay, could you put your hand up if you're from a neighbouring country to the Ukraine, of which I think there are 7. Am I right? Okay, we have a great. So I know we have some people from Poland, from IH Toruń, and
Belarus.
Belarus. Great. Okay, and Budapest. Okay, that's me. So I'm British. I'm living in Budapest, as Olena mentioned. Okay, anybody from beyond the borders, apart from Annette? Oh, she said, great, good, and more. Okay, we have 1 or 2, or 3, or 4, or 5, great, good. Okay. So very briefly, you already know, I'm living in Budapest. I've lived in Budapest for about 20 years. I worked for over 10 years at International House in Budapest. I think I grew up as a teacher at International House Budapest. I've also worked for International House in Spain and in Portugal, and I've since worked for the British Council in Slovakia, and I now do some freelance work for them. I'm a teacher trainer, I write some course materials for OUP and Macmillan. There's a book out there from Macmillan stand. And I do other little bits and bobs. I do a little bit of work for Euro exam. So today I have my Euro exam hat on. Okay? I will try to look at everybody, but I'm trying to also be heard and use the microphone. So forgive me. And I've only got 2 hands. Okay? So apologies. I will try to speak to all of you. This is my second visit to Kiev. I'm really thrilled to be here, and I would like to thank International House Kiev very much for including me in the schedule. It's a real privilege to be here. It's really nice to be amongst other IH teachers. It's like coming home. There's just a different ethos. And it's very comfortable. It's a language, if you like, I understand, and I think we're on the same wavelength. So that's very important for me, but it's very nice to be part of the little IH, or not so little IH network. When I first came to Kiev, it was from Budapest in the mid-90s. So over 20 years ago, it seems like just last week actually, and it was for a long weekend. It was much colder than it is now. There was snow on the ground, but beautiful blue skies and sunshine. And I remember the market, the opera house. I think we went to some Tchaikovsky something. I remember some museums, lots of things. I remember the trams, the metro, the buses. I'm quite fond of public transport. I'll let you into a secret. If you're in Budapest, sometime soon, or maybe not so soon, you might hear me on the Underground. I do the announcements, the English announcements for the Budapest public transport system. I mean, you know, teaching doesn't pay very well. You need to do something else. But that's one of my moonlighting jobs. But that's quite fun. So I have a thing about, I quite like trams and buses and metros, and one of the things I have to do tomorrow, because I didn't do it in the mid-90s, is to go to the metro stop Osmyslenная, is that how you pronounce it? Because I believe it's the deepest metro stop in the world, at over 100 meters deep, so I'm going to have to include that on my itinerary for tomorrow morning. I'm also, because I was coming here to Kiev, I started rereading Bulgakov's Master and Margarita. So hands up if you read this. Everybody's almost hands put their hand up. Okay, great. It's a great read, and it's a very good reread as well. I'm about halfway through now, this time. But I got to the point on about page 45 earlier this week when the cat gets on the tram with a 10 kopeck piece to buy a ticket, and I thought, oh, wouldn't it be good to see that in here? But actually, I think I have to go to Moscow to see that, because I don't think that's happened here. Anyway, for me, that's very exciting. So today, what I want to do is to talk a little bit about, that's me in Kiev, 20 years ago. And I don't know what, there's some church in the background. You can see a few spires somewhere around there. Anyway, let's get rid of that. Okay, what I want to do today is talk a little bit about exams. I know there are people here who don't like tests, they've already said so, but I also know that there's a little boy who studies at IH Kiev who loves tests, but we'll see about that in a moment. So what I want to do is talk a little bit about exams, but then talk about how we can prepare students for exams in the classroom so that they not only succeed in those exams, but they also learn useful language which they can use in a real and authentic context. And I know that there are some talks coming up later today. There's Glenn's talk and there's Darina's talk and more about real English, real life, authentic language in the classroom. And these are kinds of things that can feed into good practice activities. So first of all, I'd like some of your thoughts on exams. Oh no, let me tell you about, sorry, backtrack. This is my little niece. She's called Amelia and she's 7. And she's about as adorable and as huggable as she looks on the screen. This was her first day back at school in September, and this is her school uniform. It's a lot better than my grey school uniform, I have to say. Anyway, Amelia's homework last week was quite interesting. And I wonder if you would be able to do her homework. Seriously. Mind you, I think you're linguists, maybe you would. We'll see. So, her homework. She's 7. Could you do this? Do you know what a fronted adverbial is? You know, in the UK they have this thing with terminology. She was given some tips, fortunately. I said to her mum, could you do this? And she said, oh, yeah, for Amelia, she's fine. Amelia's a bit of an exception. She's good. She reads books. In fact, she now reads her mum the bedtime story when she goes to bed. But she's a reader, so she's smart. She's an exception. She was given some tips. Here are 3 examples of fronted adverbials. Okay, it's a bit clearer now. Yeah? So maybe you could do this now. But I think for many people this is a bit of a challenge. Do we need to call these words by these names? I'm not sure. I think it's a little excessive. Okay, so exams and tests. I'd like to know what you think about exams and tests and the kinds of words which come to mind when people talk about tests and exams.
Stress.
What else?
Anxiety.
Okay, stop. Okay, right. This is where I want you to go to menti.com and I want you to write with your partner, I want you to think of 3 words that come to mind when you think of exams, and when you've typed in your 3 words, or 2, but maximum 3, you can click submit and they'll come up on the screen. So, let me go. Coming.
The code.
Coming. The code's coming.
Think about the word we're going to.
Anxiety, stress, scores. Time.
I guess only one should be. Timing. Stress. The first word is speaking.
Also, business.
Business.
Yeah, it's
Why?
a business exam preparation. Look, your exam, it's an exam which is being marketed right now to us, so that we could market to our students.
Okay.
And a single teacher will market to multiple students, and like each student is going to pay $200 for every exam. So with a single teacher, chances are that the teacher marketed to multiple classes. A single teacher may like market exams for.
So the code is 52764. 52764.
5, 2,
7, 6,
2. Again.
5, 2, 7, 6, 4.
7, 6.
So the code is at the top.
Yeah, that's correct.
Oh, we're getting some words up. Oh. So type in your words and press submit. Let's see what you think when you think of exams.
Another word.
Anxiety, ANX, Y,
And
resubmit. So submit. Stress. Of course. Stress.
oh,
Interesting. Excitement. It's exciting representative.
Whoa. Come on. Calm down.
Nervous.
Okay, they're still coming, but 115 people have submitted their answers. This is fantastic. This is great. 118. Any more? 118. Okay, it's not all bad. There are some interesting words up there, and I'm sure you can see some of them too. I'm looking with difficulty, however. Cheers! Exhausted.
Unnecessary stress.
Success! Yes! Great.
Headache.
Alcohol. I can understand that. That's fair enough. 124. Any more submits before we move? Sorry? Because most people have, because that's the word that has come up most times. The bigger the word, let me get this right. How do you say this in English? The more people who put the word in, the bigger the word comes up on screen. Okay?
challenge the second word.
Okay, challenge, that's not bad. That's a bit better than stress, perhaps. We've got challenge here.
Insomnia.
Insomnia.
Okay?
Anxiety.
Mind you, that's a lot of
Rise.
vocabulary. You've come up with some fantastic
Nerves.
words. I haven't thought of all those at all.
Tears, no
That's
food.
great. Okay, shall we move on? Okay.
Sleepless nights. Recognition.
Coffee.
Alcohol is the best one.
Don't forget the alcohol. I know there's plenty of good stuff in the Ukraine to calm you. Okay. I did a little survey and I asked students and I asked teachers what they thought of when they thought of exams. And I want to show you what the results were. Not quite the same, but some nice words. I'll go to slide. It's okay, I'll go to... No, I'll go to slide. Okay, so this is what we got with the students. A small select survey of 20 students. Similar, huh?
Yeah.
Stress, anxiety, but there's some lovely words there.
Cheating.
Panic.
Cheating,
Cheating.
butterflies.
No alcohol.
Prisoner.
Look at this. End tunnel light. So there's lots of stuff. What about teachers? What do you think they thought?
Life.
Blood.
There's some nice things here. Okay, you can look at the slides later on their webpage if you want. Let me show you what the teachers thought. Surprised? Not really. There's lots of, we've got challenge again. Boring. Pass. Goal. Focus. Responsibility. Correcting. Loads of things. I think they're all quite familiar. Okay, so exams cause stress. And we need to think about why this might be and how we can get rid of it without drinking ourselves under the desk. Okay? So this is what I'd like to do briefly this morning. I'm going to talk very briefly only about why it is that exams might be stressful and what we can do, and then I want to show you some sample exam tasks, and these are taken from the Euro exam, and some activities which can help you prepare them, but activities which give students a chance to use language in a real life, sort of meaningful context. Just first of all, let's look at some words, a bit of vocabulary. So, terminology-itis. You know tonsillitis? Okay, terminology itis, something you can put itis on the end of anything, and it's something that's given too much focus. I heard the other day about World Cup itis. Too much focus. So this is an example, as I told you before about my little niece Amelia, where in the UK they're using these terms, they're calling language by complicated language, which we don't understand. Yeah? We're all perfectly capable of using descriptive language, but if we talk about fronted adverbials, do we really know what we mean? Okay? So there is this problem. There's also a problem that there are exam factories, kinds of factories which just churn out people doing exams, whether they pass or fail, they just want to churn people out. And then high stakes testing, and I just want to mention this so that you know what it is. High stakes testing is when it really matters if you pass or fail. The most recent exam that I did was the Hungarian citizenship exam. I won't go into the politics of why I decided to do this. Some of you may be able to guess. But in order to become a Hungarian citizen, I had to do an exam in Hungarian and learn about the constitution and the law and history and all sorts of things. Now for me, it wasn't a case of can I stay in Hungary or not if I pass this exam. But on the day of the exam, it was very humbling to see that there were people there from countries in Africa, from the Middle East, people who needed to pass that exam to apply for citizenship so that they could stay in Hungary, get a job and support their families. That was really high stakes. That was tough for them. Okay, on the handout, by the way, on the front page of the handout, on the top half, there are some words and definitions for you to match. If you're a little bit bored later on, you can do a matching activity, but that includes some of these words. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay, good. So here you can see some of these words in context. Michael Rosen, you may know, we're all going on a bear hunt. Do you know this book? We're All Going on a Bear Hunt, I think was written by Michael Rosen, and he's very much into language which everybody can understand. He's very against terminology. Here's a little bit more about exam factories, because we need, if we have students taking exams, we don't want to simply get them through an exam, either pass or fail. We want to make sure that they're doing an exam so that they can become valuable citizens and they can contribute something to society, and they've got language they can use in a real life context. And this is a comment about high stakes testing, and this can really impact negatively on teachers and learners. This may be familiar. This is an example of a Chinese student preparing for IELTS. The belief that if I do another practice paper, I'm more likely to pass the exam. Does your language improve if you simply do another practice paper? No. Your familiarity with the exam does, but you're not going to get better at the language simply by doing another practice paper. And this is an example, the fun has gone out of teaching. So what's all this about? We call this washback, the effect of tests and exams on teaching, on the classroom. And here's a little definition for you. Okay. And we can have negative washback and positive washback. Let's have a look at the negative. So, as a teacher, you know what's on the test, or in the exam, and you teach just that, because that's all that's needed. You don't teach useful things like buying a tram ticket, because it's not on the test, perhaps. Okay? Familiar? This says, will this be on the test? Or can I forget it already? Yeah. I have students like that. So it's important that there is some common understanding or a link between what we're teaching and what students need to be able to do. We've talked already about over-test familiarity, which doesn't necessarily and is unlikely to help students improve their language. And then we've already mentioned high-stakes testing, which can have a very negative, scary impact on test takers. And also teachers. Some people judge teachers by the number of students who pass exams. That's tough. But there's also positive washback. Let's have a look. Okay. And a good exam is an exam that focuses on just one single skill. For example, if you want to test writing, you need really clear, simple instructions for the writing task so that the students don't have to read anything complicated. If you have a very complicated reading test and reading text, and then you ask students to write something, maybe they can't demonstrate their writing because they don't understand the reading. So you need to separate the skills. Yeah? We need to be able to measure the performance of doing something through language, and a task-based approach. We've already heard lots about task-based learning from previous speakers this morning, is useful. If you have a description of what a candidate at a certain level needs to be able to produce, it's much easier to be able to say, yes, this candidate is doing these things. This is their behaviour, therefore they're at this or this level. And a good exam means that the students are actually going to enjoy preparing for the exam because they can see the kind of language that they're learning is going to be useful and help them pass the exam. It's a win-win situation. Okay, so far so good? Okay, I'd like to show you some typical exam tasks taken from the Your Exam speaking paper, and these are from B2 level, so these are upper intermediate. And I'm going to show you 3 tasks. The first one, I think, is the most interesting and most fun. I think it's different from other exams, but it's really very everyday. Let me show you how it works. These are called dialogues, transactional dialogues. So a transaction is when there's communication between 2 people. It could be on paper, but we're looking here at something which is spoken. In this part of the exam, the students are given a card, and it has a situation on it, and they have to do something. Let me show you one, and I'd like to find out, for you to think about what you would say in this situation. What would you say?
Excuse me. What's your food?
Just for the person next to you. What would you say to the waiter?
I'll never do this.
Excuse me, there's this big problem with the food because it doesn't match the description. And actually my expectation based on my knowledge of the
Okay,
of the
what have
world
you got?
cuisine.
Some examples. What would you say to the waiter?
Oh, yes.
Pathetic.
This part of the test, you must say
I won't say
something
anything.
that is
I just won't
appropriate
eat,
to
that's
say
all.
in a situation.
I don't know.
Read each card and follow the instructions.
I'm too shy to say something. I don't know. I don't want to hurt the waiter because it's not waiter's
Okay, I have an
fault.
example here. Somebody says, I'm not really enjoying this
Maybe.
meal. What else could you say to the waiter? Fire the cook. Kitty, what else?
Hire a cook.
Could I speak to the manager, please? Hire a cook.
Yeah.
That's nice. Okay, here's another one for you. With the person next to you, what would you say?
France just moved into New France. What is
Let's go and see your new flat. Have some beer with me.
Okay, give me an example. What could you say in this situation?
Let's go and see your flat.
Let's go and see your flat. Great. What else? Welcome to the flat.
Welcome party.
When's the housewarming party? These are all great. But these are pretty everyday situations, aren't they? They're not off the moon. They're kind of fairly normal, yeah, situations. Okay, I'm going to show you 1.5 minutes of 2 students doing this in an exam, so you can see how it works. And what I also want to tell you is that when the student has said something in response, the examiner then says something back. And the student responds a second time. So then they really have to listen and respond. Okay? So they're given a card, they say something, the examiner responds, and then they say something else. Okay? So there are 4 things. 1 card and 3 things are said. Okay? Let's listen to the exam and see what you think. See if your answers are better than theirs. You're going to meet Reka and Alexa.
Okay, thank you very much. In this part of the test, you must say something that is appropriate to say in a situation. Read each card and follow the instructions. Reiko, read this card. When you're ready, please start a conversation with me. I am the waiter.
Sorry, can you help me? This food is totally awful. This is cold, and there I found some hair in it, so I wouldn't pay for it.
I'm terribly sorry. What can I bring you instead?
Nothing, but I won't pay for it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Alexa, read this card. When you're ready, please start a conversation with me. I am your friend.
Hello, long time no see. I heard you just moved into a new flat. I wanted to ask you, what is it like?
It's nice and there's plenty of space. When can you come and see it?
I don't know, maybe tomorrow?
What did you think?
That's a lot of stress.
A lot of stress?
Yeah.
You think they're stressed?
For the left test taker.
For the candidate on the left, she's stressed?
Yeah, from her.
Well, everyone's a little bit nervous when you've got a camera on you and you're doing the exam. A little bit. What about the answers? What did you think of the answers? They were quite good, actually. Yeah. She also, and I find her hair in it. She's quite creative. Yeah. You don't have to be super creative. You have to say something appropriate in the situation. But with these two, what I thought was really nice also was that they were able to respond to what he said afterwards. That was nice. Yeah. So that's just a little bit of an example, so you can see how it works. Okay. And can we wind up? No. I'd like to go to the. Oops. Oops. Nothing's happening. Oh. It was there. Oh. There's another example, a third one. Okay. And here you can see this was Reka and Alexa, and these were the two examples. In the exam they get 3 each. Okay? So, looking at this, what language and skills is this task testing?
Functional language.
So it's a speaking exam. It's testing speaking, but can you be more specific? Conversation, functions. What else? A little bit of accuracy, fluency, the ability also to identify whether it's a formal or an informal situation. You probably wouldn't get full marks if you said, fire the cook, because it's a little bit direct, and you need to be a little bit, I like it, but you need to be a little bit more polite. Let's have a look. So first of all, you need to identify the situation. So if you're in a restaurant with a waiter, you need to get the waiter's attention, and you need to try to be polite. And here are some more. To say something appropriate. Seems obvious, but that's important. To be able to respond to what the interlocutor, the examiner, says. And obviously the last two as well. An understanding of the kind of situation it is, and to be able to respond and solve the problem easily. So what about in the classroom? What could you do in the classroom? With the person next to you, 30 seconds. Give you an activity you could do in the classroom that would help students prepare for this sort of task. 30 seconds.
Was this?
With your partner.
Could you do in the classroom to help students for speaking? To work with different scenarios, different everyday situations, and to work with them.
There is a book on functional language, English for Life, V1, something like that. Speaking and listening, so I would use it. But it would be like V1.
Okay, have you got some ideas? I know you're
Making
all
up dialogues.
teachers who've trained at International House. You're used to this kind of communicative stuff. Yeah? What would you do in the classroom?
Role-playing.
Role play, excellent. In a restaurant, meeting with a friend, great. What else? Lots of listening. Maybe listen. Who are the people? Where are they? Great. What else? Nice. You could watch a video. You could watch it with the sound down. What are they talking about? Nice. What else? Okay, we've got some nice ideas. Okay, let me show you a few more. Listening. Here's lots. Have a look at these.
Oh, dialogues.
Yeah, picture, of course.
These are on the handout. You don't need to screenshot these, but you can.
I have a lot of it in FCE actually.
Yeah.
Ready for FCE.
Okay? But sometimes, I think we give ourselves a lot of work. And I think sometimes we can hand over the responsibility to the students Do you remember Farek was saying earlier this morning, he was saying, get the students to come up with ideas. Get them to choose the recipe. I love that activity. Find the best recipe online. Yeah? Couldn't do that when I was learning a language at school. There wasn't an online. Okay? So maybe get students to come up with crazy situations. Get the situation, write the card, then they can role play these ideas together. Yeah? Get them involved. It's about functional language, about good pronunciation, about intonation, a bit of word stress, and so on. Okay, but also, again, we don't need to reinvent everything. I know you use a lot of good course books. For example, maybe you use English File. And there's an awful lot of stuff already available in the book that you can use, which will help prepare students for this kind of task. Take, for example, this is from pre-intermediate English File in a restaurant. If you can see the picture, bottom right, what do you think is going on in this picture?
The same. Similar situation.
Maybe it's a similar situation. Yeah? Okay, we're going to have a look at this little one very briefly. So here she is again. What do they order? What problems do they have? This is the listening for the students, okay? Before they start practicing, they need to listen to examples of good language. Oops. So here they're ordering. And she orders a tuna with a salad, and he orders steak and fries, lovely, lovely, listening to, uh-oh. So there's nothing wrong with the food itself. It's not awful or cold, or there isn't a hair in it, okay? But it's not what she ordered. Familiar?
Yeah.
I'm sure you have course books that include these kinds of things, yeah? And what's lovely about English File as well is that you get lists of useful phrases and role plays. It's all there. Don't start rewriting everything and staying up late on a Saturday evening when you have better things to do, okay? Okay, but here's another one. This is a practice activity which I wrote. A little task, because I'm reading The Master and Margarita. And what do you think the situation is? That's my copy. That's the cat. Okay, so maybe you're going to International House Kiev to the stop called Politechniczny Instytut. Except I think that's a metro stop, isn't it? But never mind, never mind. Okay, so what do you say? This is a situation, what do you say?
Where can I get the tickets?
It's a tricky one, because in some countries you're allowed to buy a ticket from the driver.
Yeah.
But in some countries you have to buy a ticket at the kiosk. You can't buy a ticket from the driver. In Budapest you can buy a ticket from the driver, but you pay double. In Vienna, because I was there a couple of weeks ago, on a Saturday afternoon when the kiosk has closed at 1 o'clock and it's 3 o'clock and you get on the bus and the driver says, sorry, you need a ticket. Can I buy one from you? No, you can buy one from the kiosk. But they're closed. And he shrugged. So I rode a few stops illegally. Okay, so the cat says, what does the cat say? Yeah. This cat, as you know, stands on its hind legs. Yeah? And it has money in its pocket. And it can speak. The cat says, for example, good morning, could I have a ticket please? No?
Yeah.
I want to go to International House Kiev. Okay? And then of course there's a response from the examiner. You know the story. And the cat says, yeah. Whatever the cat says, okay. So you can make these situations up yourselves, yeah? You don't need to spend hours and hours, or get the students to make the situations up, because it's quite fun.
It's not
Okay.
fair.
Okay, I mentioned to you that this is my second visit to Kiev. I was here 20 years ago, and everybody says, oh, 20 years ago, Kiev has changed so much. But I've been before. So I wonder if you've got any ideas or of anything I could do in Kiev tomorrow that's a little bit different. So, for example, you might suggest St. Sophia's Cathedral, a very traditional idea for a Sunday morning in Kiev. Maybe you've got some more wacky, some crazy ideas, because students always like things that are a little bit more different. Yeah? Maybe you've got some ideas which are different for me tomorrow morning in Kiev, and a reason why it would be good. Let me give you half a minute with the person next to you. Come up with one idea of something a bit different that I could do tomorrow morning in Kiev, and why. 30 seconds.
Practice functional language at the flea market.
Learn some Ukrainian words. Yes. Or go and have a ride in marshrutka. This is the extreme sport.
Why? No. I did it yesterday night.
Or
Okay, any ideas? Anything
try
really good for
Ukrainian
me
cuisine.
tomorrow?
Borщ.
It's a very traditional idea.
Yeah.
Any idea? You have to shout
Vareniki.
loudly or put your hand up. Yes? Sorry? What is that?
It's an outdoor museum.
Oh wow, why should I go there?
Sorry?
Why should I go there?
Because it will be a nice day and it's outdoors and it shows regional architecture of Ukraine.
I like the sound of that. Thank you. Another idea, yes.
Eat borscht.
Borscht. Why?
It's the tastiest thing in the world.
It's the best thing in the world. Okay, fair enough, I like that. Give me another idea, yes.
Go to the same place you took a photo 20 years ago and take a new photo.
That's nice. But I'll need your help in identifying what that church is in the background, because I have no idea where that was. But that's a really nice idea. Thank you. Okay, yes.
Go to Bulgakov Museum.
Really? I would really like to. That's a very good idea, because I didn't do that last time. That sounds great. Sorry? Oh, okay. Okay. Breakfast nearby. Okay. Double whammy. Kill two birds with one stone. Okay, great. These are nice ideas. Thank you. I'm not sure how much time I've got, but I'm going to try. Okay, and we've just lost. We've just lost. Oh, okay. So we had this idea. You give me some much better ideas. Thank you very much. That's great. Actually, this is a little bit like the last task on the Euro exam speaking test. Okay? This is one actually I made up, but you know, hey, it's very similar. And students, the two students, because it's always two students who do the exam together, they're given a situation and they have to first of all brainstorm lots and lots of things, and then they have to come up with, they have to decide on 3 or 4 and give reasons. As you did, you gave reasons why you gave me these suggestions. And they have to come to an agreement. Okay, so this is very like a task. I'm sure you could invent some of these yourselves. Now, let's have a look at a real one, because that's not real. It's like the cat. Okay, so this is what they have to do. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here's a real one.
You need to make an agreement to go together somewhere.
Do you think you could do that?
Yeah.
Good. Do we need to do it now? Good. Okay. So, I'm going to give you this because I want to move on. So in this kind of task, where the two students are brainstorming and then choosing the best with reasons, this is what you're testing. Turn-taking, which is having a conversation, agreeing, disagreeing, suggesting alternatives, giving and asking for reasons, and so on. Okay? And what sort of things could you do in the classroom to help students prepare for this sort of task? the words. Good. What else? Give them real life situations. Good. Give them. Make sure they've got the vocabulary to do this task. So if we're talking about to be more eco-friendly, they need to know the word plastic and bottle, for example. Yeah? Okay? Great. And give them real situations. That's really nice. Okay, let me give you some examples. So you could give them a bunch of different functions and ask them to put them in groups. You can see that in course books. Yeah? Or you could put the phrases on cards. You deal out the cards. The students try the activity. When they use a phrase, they put the card down or they turn it over. Yeah? Doing something active with a card helps bring the language out. They put it down and use it. You could put students in threes and have two of them having a conversation and the third student is ticking off the phrases they use. Then they change and they swap. What about this one? So you get the students to unjumble the words in a phrase. Okay? And if you want some more good backup material, there's a very nice site from the British Council. This is referenced on the handout. I'm not expecting you to read this. But there's some useful tips for helping students practice conversations of this kind. Okay? Okay. I have a story for you. I want to tell you something about what I did when I first came to Kiev 20 years ago. We did lots and lots of things in only, I think, 3.5 days. But there was one thing I remember vividly. So I'd like to... No. I'm going to tell you some words. I want you to see if you can guess what the story is. This is my story. It's in a bag. Story in a bag? It's great working with IH teachers because they know what story in a bag means and I don't have to explain it. Great. So, I've got 6 words in the bag and I'm going to read them to you. I'm going to pre-teach one to you in case you're low level and you don't understand. So the first word is, just listen and then I'll put them on the screen. You don't need to write them down. I'll put them on the screen in a moment. So the first word is taste. Okay? Taste. The second word is fist. This is my fist. This is my fist. So when I scrunch up my hand, this is my fist. But you know that because you're advanced level. Okay. Jam jar is a glass jar you put jam in. You know how to. Ladle. Ladle. So a ladle is a long-handled spoon. It's a round spoon with a very long handle that you use for serving soup. Great. Ladle. This one says bucket of cream. Actually, it was sour cream, and that was when I learned the word smetana. Okay, you got an idea of what the story might be? Here's the think out of the box. Here's the last one. Market stall. That's the 6th word. Okay? I'm going to give you 1 minute with the person next to you to guess what the story was. I want you to use all those words.
She was at the market, and we usually have these market stalls with different things, and you can taste smetana just from the label. Yes, and Bessarabka or something like this. Yeah, you can have this.
And then
And the ginger, yeah.
the waiter came back and said, "I'm sorry.
I know.
It's not your order, so I'm going to take it away." And
Okay, have you got a story? Who's got a story? Who's got a story? You've got a story? I'm coming. I want to hear your story.
Maybe it's about Ukrainian grannies selling cream from using a ladle and giving it, offering to taste it from your fist, and putting it and selling it into a jam jar from a market stall. She's selling it from a market stall.
It was a market, yes.
Not bad.
No.
Any other stories? Yes. Any other stories?
It was the market. Sergey has a story, I know.
One more story. No? Oh, we've got a story here. Different story. A different story? This one's about soup, I'm
Maybe
sure.
it was Bessarabka, everybody knows this market, famous one. And you tasted sour cream just from your fist, and for you it was a new experience. Yeah.
Expert local Kiev inhabitant. Okay.
There was a fist fight.
So these are my pictures, and these are the order in which I would tell the story. And this is the last picture. So there's the ladle. Can you see the ladle at the bottom there?
We know.
Yeah, okay. You've guessed my story. You've guessed my story. But this for me was quite a revelation. I'll give you the punchline actually, because you haven't guessed the punchline. This was a revelation, and I was with my friend Fran, who is also a teacher trainer and was at IH with me in Budapest at the time. And the two of us had come to Kiev together. And we went to the Bessarabka market. And she wrote a letter to her parents that she found and sent me last week, and she said the market was really busy and it was full of fruit, which is interesting because all I remember is these little old ladies and the bucket, huge buckets of cream. And we went from one stall to the next, and I had no idea, but you hold your fist out, as you know, this was for me new, and you taste it. And this was absolutely fantastic. I think we were probably quite sick at the end because we went from stall to stall to stall to tasting all these fantastic sour creams. I have to say, much better than the sour cream in Hungary, because they had pretty good sour cream then. But here, different thicknesses, different sourness, different bitterness, all sorts of things. Absolutely wonderful. So I was a convert totally to sour cream with everything when I got back to Budapest. And as my friend wrote in her letter, we did all the sour cream stalls, and then we went on to the honey stalls. You probably know those ones as well. They're not in my story because I'd forgotten that. But what I did remember, and what is really important, and I'm not sure if that's true now because I haven't been back yet, is that, so we tasted them all so that we could decide which one we wanted to buy. And then we went back to the stall to ask if we could buy some of this one because it was the thickest and the creamiest and the bestest. And the little lady, the little old nani, as I would say in Hungarian, the little old lady asked, not for a fist, but for our jam jar.
Ah, yes, didn't you?
And we didn't have a jam jar. We had no idea that we had to bring a jam jar. And I couldn't take it home on my fist. So this is the money. These are my carbonavets, ready to buy the smetana that we couldn't buy because we didn't have a jam jar. Anyway, that's my story about the market, and I might try and fit that in tomorrow as well, just to have a look. This was the letter my friend wrote, and this was her story about we'll leave that for now. We're running out of time. Okay, so, but this is like the picture story, which is task 2 in the Euro exam. And here you've got 6 pictures. In an exam you have 10 or 12 pictures. These are the first 6. And if you have a quick look here, you can see what's going on. There's an alarm clock, shaving or cleaning his teeth, running off to work. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Can you see what's going on? Yep. So this is the kind of picture story that you get in the Euro exam. And again, it's not something weird and wonderful. It's not a fabulous science fiction film plot. It's an everyday story. So it's a kind of vocabulary that students will know. Tap dripping. Well, at B2 maybe they should know about a tap dripping. Okay. So they're always given a starter. This is how it starts. So we've got a name, which is nice because it personalises the story. And for this task, the students get the picture story in advance of the exam, 10 minutes. So they have 10 minutes to prepare the story, and they can use a dictionary to look words up, and they can make notes. They don't take the dictionary into the exam, they take their notes into the exam. They can't read their notes, but they're there as a reminder, because this is an authentic type activity. You know, life is full of dictionaries, isn't it? You check things online all the time, or in a good dictionary. Okay? So this is a typical story, and in turn, each student tells their story to the examiner and to the other candidate. So, what skills or language does telling a story test? It's a monologue because it's telling a story. Amelia's very good at this task. She doesn't know it's a task, she just thinks it's telling stories. What does it test? What do you have to be able to do in order to tell a story? Describing pictures, fronted adverbials. Yes, lots of picture descriptions, but not in the present tense necessarily. A story is usually narrative tenses. Okay, what else? Linking words, sequencing devices. Yes, good. Okay. Here are some examples. Yeah? And ways of testing this in the classroom? Story in the bag. I'm sure you've done this. Yeah? Stories around the classroom. We've already heard some lovely activities this morning from Tanya's talk and Farag, and also lots of ideas from Annette as well, and all these feed into these kinds of tasks. I want to point out that as you may have heard from Tim, he mentioned that the Euro exam tasks originally, and in fact now, are written by teachers with a communicative methodology background, and they're written for the communicative classroom. And they were also, Euro exams actually started within International House. Some of you, if you bought, begged, borrowed, or stolen a copy of Learning Teaching by Jim Scrivener, will know Jim Scrivener. And Jim Scrivener was one of the founding people for the Euro exam tasks. And he came up with a lot of these lovely ideas. I mean, particularly the dialogues, the transactional dialogues, which I think are great. So I think these kinds of activities are second nature to people like you. And why not a group competition? I know you're hungry, although there was a pretty good coffee break. Did you have English breakfast down there? I saw fried eggs down there. But nevertheless, I'm not going to play this video, but I'm simply going to mention this website. This is a website by Kieran Donahue, lives in Barcelona and does a lot of work with IH Barcelona. This little film is called The Reader. It's referenced on your handout. It's 2 minutes. It's a gem. The whole website is an absolute treasure. It's free to use. Each little video has a lesson plan with it. If you have nothing else to use for teaching, you could probably survive on this. Oh, and English file. Oh, and some teacher training with IH, but you know what I'm saying. So this is absolutely fantastic. I'm not going to play it now because I think you want lunch. These are some of some stills from there. Okay, if you want some more exam prep ideas, there is a site here. This is also listed on the handout on the back. You can find more exam preparation ideas here. And just finally, to round up, make sure that when you're preparing students for exams, that you're not teaching to the test. You're not simply familiarising students with how the test works. Obviously that's important, but you need to make sure that when they pass the test, they've got language that they can do something with for real. Good course books help you do that as well, because we want to prepare students who are able to contribute and be valuable members of society. And then, as I said before, it's a win-win. Дуже дякую.